Let me tell you, brother, it's not a must that everything should be mentioned in the Quran. Even if it's mentioned in the Hadith, it's sufficient. I know there are some Muslims who say, no, we only follow Quran. This is totally wrong. Allah clearly mentioned in the Quran, Atiullah wa atiur Rasul. Obey Allah and obey the Messenger. So everything is not mentioned in the Quran. Atiullah wa atiur Rasul. Obey Allah and obey the Messenger. So everything is not mentioned in the Quran.
What type of Islam is there when you're not going to stand and ruku' and sujood and fatiha and do the arkan of the salah? It's not mentioned in the Qur'an. Why? Because the Qur'an tells you to follow the Prophet. Why? Because the Qur'an tells you to follow the Prophet.
وَنَزَّلْنَا عَلَيْكَ الْكِتَابَ تِبْيَانًا لِكُلِّ شَيْءٍ وهدى ورحمة وبشرى للمسلمين. So everything is not mentioned in the Quran. ونزلنا عليك الكتاب تبيانا لكل شيء وهدى ورحمة وبشرى للمسلمين.
It's not mentioned in the Quran.
ونزلنا عليك الكتاب تبيانا لكل شيء وهدى ورحمة وبشرى للمسلمين.
وألقوا إلى الله يومئذ السلم وضل عنهم ما كانوا يفترون. الذين كفروا وصدوا عن سبيل الله زدناهم عذابا فوق العذاب بما كانوا يفسدون. ويوم نبعث في كل أمة شهيدا عليهم من أنفسهم وجئنا بك شهيدا على هؤلاء ونزلنا عليك الكتاب تبيانا لكل شيء وهدى ورحمة وبشرى للمسلمين. ونزلنا عليك الكتاب تبيانا لكل شيء وهدى ورحمة وبشرى للمسلمين. إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله الذي خلق السماوات والأرض وجعل الظلمات والنور ثم الذين كفروا بربهم يعدلون. ونزلنا عليك الكتاب تبيانا لكل شيء وهدى ورحمة وبشرى للمسلمين. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My dear brothers and sisters, we seek refuge in Allah from Shaitan the outcast. We begin in the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful. My dear brothers and sisters, inshallah, today I want us to look at one important ayah of the Quran. Almighty Allah is saying in this particular ayah that the Quran, being a sign from Him, is the absence of any contradiction. Allah said in Quran chapter 4 verse 82, Almighty Allah is saying that أَفَلَا يَتَدَبَّرُونَ الْقُرْآنَ وَلَوْ كَانَ مِنْ عِنْدِ غَيْرِ اللَّهِ لَوَجَدُوا فِيهِ اخْتِلَافًا كَثِيرًا. Allah is saying in this particular ayah, Almighty Allah is saying, do they not ponder over the Quran? Had it been from other than Allah, they would have found in it several contradictions. My dear brothers and sisters, Allah is using the concept, the absence of contradiction in the Quran, that means the Quran is from Him. The Quran being a sign from Allah is the absence of any contradiction in it. May Allah give us understanding. May Allah save us from the ways of Shaitan. My dear brothers and sisters, Almighty Allah, in this particular ayah, Allah has made it very plain, very clear that there is no contradiction in the Quran. However, unfortunately, Sunnah wal Jama'ah, they interpret some verses of the Quran, and the meaning that they give to those verses contradict the Quran. My dear brothers and sisters, that is the famous verse, obey Allah and obey the messenger. Ati'u Allah wa ati'u Rasul. My dear brothers and sisters, according to Sunnah wal Jama'ah, obey Allah and obey the messenger means the Quran does not explain everything. Obey Allah and obey the messenger according to them means the Quran does not explain everything. However, there are so many verses of the Quran that Allah is saying in those verses that the Quran is an explanation for everything. So how can Allah reveal to the Prophet Muhammad, the last prophet of Allah, and the Quran being the last scripture, Allah has revealed in it precise verses, and Almighty Allah is saying in the Quran, the book of guidance, that this Quran is an explanation for everything. And you people are to get another ayah of the Quran that you are saying that the meaning of that ayah is that the Quran does not explain everything. So the understanding, the propagation, what they are spreading, and the things that they are saying to people, that is pure falsehood, which is not in line with the Quran. Anyone who says that obey Allah and obey the messenger means the Quran does not explain everything, such a person has lied against Allah. My dear brothers and sisters, when we say contradiction, what does it mean? Contradiction is to get two opposite meanings. The Quran are having verses which confirm the oneness of Allah. So in the Quran, you are going to get verses confirming that there is only one God. And you will never get any verse in the Quran to say that God is two or God is three. There is one God. You never get any verse to say God is not one. God is one. Qul huwa Allahu ahad. Qul huwa, say that there is one God or God, Allah is one. You will never get any verse of the Quran to say that Allah is not one. The direct opposite cannot be found in the Quran. So there are verses, the same when it comes to verses of the Quran. Allah said that what? We have sent down to you the Quran. Tibyanan likulli shay'in, to be an explanation for all things. وَهُدًى وَرَحْمَةً وَبُشْرٌ لِلْمُسْلِمِينَ, and guidance and glad tidings for what? For those who have surrendered to Allah. So Allah has said it in precise verses that the Quran explains everything. However, they are denying the belief that the Quran explains everything. One, Sunnah wal Jama'ah, the Shia, the other sects, they don't believe in the verses of Allah. Almighty Allah said in the Quran, do you believe in part of the book and disbelieve in parts? This has been the previous scriptures that Almighty Allah sent down. The people of the book, that was what they were doing. They believe in part of the book and they disbelieve in the part of the book of Allah. The same that we find our Sunni brothers, the Shia, the other sects, that is what we find them doing. They will tell you that obey Allah and obey the messenger. And why Allah said we should obey the messenger is because the Quran does not explain the concept of Islam. The Quran does not even explain how to perform as-salat. The Quran does not explain the zakat. The Quran does not explain the hajj. The Quran does not explain Islam. That is what they say. Even if you are to take the Quran, you can't perform as-salah. All these are lies. All these are fabrications. All these are saying about Allah that which you don't have any knowledge. My dear brothers and sisters, we have proven, given the facts, Almighty Allah, this Quran, Allah said the Quran, Tibyana likulli shay'in, is an explanation for everything. The Quran, it explains how to perform as-salah. The Quran, it explains zakat, how much to give zakat. The Quran, it explains the hajj. Everything is explained in the Quran. Your absence or you not understanding what the Quran means doesn't mean that the Quran doesn't explain. No. May Allah have mercy upon us. If you don't understand something, if you are not understanding the Quran, it doesn't mean that the Quran is not having that understanding. May Allah save us. We don't know anything as Allah who teaches. Allah is the mighty one. Allah is the what? Allah is the Lord. May Allah save us from such misguidance. So my dear brothers and sisters, our Sunni brothers, the verse that they are always using is obey Allah and obey the messenger. They wanted to find something of the Quran to support the lies and the fabrications that they invented. They knew Almighty Allah in the Quran. Allah said that Allah said, we have appointed for every prophet enemies. Every prophet is having enemies of mankind and jinn. And what these enemies of the prophets, what they do is to what? Is to fabricate, is to innovate lies and fabrications, and after that, they attribute it to the prophet to mislead people from what? From the way of Allah. My dear brothers and sisters, and the Prophet Muhammad, the book that he brought is the Quran. And his enemies, the liars, they fabricated so many falsehood and they attributed it to what? To the prophet. Just like a Christian will say to you, the Christians, our Christian brothers, what they will say is that you should believe in oneness of God. You should also believe in Trinity. So according to Christians, God is one and God is three at the same time. God is one and God is also three. Trinity and oneness go hand in hand. These are together. My dear brothers and sisters, however, if we are to reflect, we know that this is a contradiction. The same to Sunnah wal Jama'ah. they will tell you that you should follow two things, Qur'an and Sunnah, go hand in hand. However, anyone who wants to be justice to himself, anyone who has put in Allah to be first and the Prophet Muhammad to be first, knows that all these are lies and fabrication, because the Qur'an and the Sunnah, you can never follow Qur'an and Sunnah. And there's a clear evidence in the Qur'an that no one can follow Qur'an and Sunnah. No one can, because the two of them contradict each other. The Qur'an and the Sunnah, they contradict themselves. They are not the same. A typical example, my dear brothers and sisters, is about what is lawful as food. If we want to look at the matter of what is lawful to be eaten as food, in the Quran, Almighty Allah said, when you differ in something, you should refer to Allah and His Messenger. And we ask ourselves, if we are to refer a matter to Allah and His Messenger, are we going to get a solution, or we are going to get two contradictory answers? If we are to refer a matter, we differ, and we are to refer a matter to Allah and His Messenger, are we going to get one answer, one solution, one answer, or we are going to get two contradictory answers? It can never be. Allah and His Messenger, they do not differ. Allah and His Messenger are together in the concept of what? Of guidance. The Messenger, he does not speak anything except what Allah has revealed to him. That is what? He speaks the truth, which is the Quran. And the Messenger himself is saying in the Quran, Quran chapter 6, verse 145, Almighty Allah commanded the Prophet to say to the people, we want to look, as I'm giving evidence why you cannot follow Quran and Sunnah. Please pay attention. Why you cannot follow Quran and Sunnah, why the two contradict themselves. I'm giving a typical example of it. In Quran chapter 6, verse 145, Almighty Allah said, Kul la ajidu fima uhiya ilayya muharraman ala ta'imin yat'amuhu illa an yakuna mayta aw daman masfuhan aw lahma khinzir fa innahu rijsun aw fiskun uhilla li ghayri Allahi bi faman ittara ghayra bagin wala 'adin fa inna rabbaka ghafurur rahim. My dear brothers and sisters, in this particular ayah, Allah is saying that the Prophet said to them, the Ahlul Kitab, the people, that La ajidu fima uhiya ilayya, I do not find in that which has been revealed to me anything forbidden for the one who wants to eat, except it be dead animals, blood, swine, the flesh of swine, and that which has been dedicated to other than Allah. So these four things, blood, dead animals, the flesh of swine, and food which have been dedicated to other than Allah. Four categories of food. These are the only food which are forbidden, that the Prophet opened his mouth to say to the people that he does not find in what has been revealed to him anything forbidden other than these four. Why? Because the people, they made so many things unlawful. The food that were provided for mankind, they were the ones who also made unlawful what Allah has made lawful. And Allah is refuting them. And Allah said the Prophet should say to them, I do not find in what has been anything forbidden for the one who wants to eat, except these four things. My dear brothers and sisters, so right now, this is an ayah of the Quran. Why you cannot follow Quran and Sunnah? Why the Sunnah is a fabrication? Why the Sunnah is a lie? Because this particular ayah, according to Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, what do they say? They claim that the Prophet received the Quran in the likeness of the Quran, which is the Sunnah. My dear brothers and sisters, Allah should save us from such misguidance. In this ayah, the Prophet did not say, I do not find in the Quran. He did not say, I do not find in the book of Allah. He said, I do not find in what has been revealed to me. So what was revealed to the Prophet is only the Quran. If you people are to say it is the Quran and the Sunnah, then wait, let's analyze the verse. I do not find in what has been revealed to me will mean I do not find in Quran and Sunnah anything forbidden to be eaten except these four food. And we ask ourselves, right now, is it true that according to the Quran and the Sunnah, these are the only four food forbidden to be eaten? The answer is no. You have it in your books. You cannot eat domestic donkey. You cannot eat a lion. You cannot eat a tiger. You cannot eat any carnivorous animal. According to Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, according to your so-called invented or your so-called purported Sunnah, may Allah save us from such misguidance. So this is a clear example. We and you. Allah says, when you differ, refer the matter to Allah and His Messenger. Now we differ. We differ with you. We the Muslims, we differ with you concerning domestic donkey, concerning the meat of a lion. Can we eat the meat of a lion? We are now going to refer it to Allah and to His Messenger. When we refer it to Allah, Allah said, yes, you can eat everything. Quran chapter 6, verse 145. Everything is permitted except those 4 categories of food, which is dead animals, blood, the flesh of swine, and that which has been dedicated to other than Allah. So Allah has permitted, the Quran permits that for the one who wants to eat, it is not compulsory. However, you can eat anything besides these 4. That's what the Quran is saying. Now, if we are to refer it to the messenger, what is the messenger going to say? In your so-called purported, in your lies and your fabrications, the prophets, the lies, the fabrications, the hadith books are saying, no, you can't eat a lion. You can't eat the meat of a lion. So right now, the Quran is saying, yes, you can eat the meat of a lion. The fabricated narrations are saying, no, you can't eat the meat of a lion. So we are referring the matter to Allah and His messenger. How can Allah say yes? And the so-called fabrications, the purported Sunnah is saying no. We want to know, is the meat of a lion lawful? You say we should refer it to Allah and His messenger. Referring it to Allah is the Quran. Referring it to the messenger is also the Quran. So when we refer the issue to Allah and His messenger, which is the Quran, the answer is yes. So Allah and His messenger, they are saying that yes. The messenger himself said, the Prophet Muhammad himself said, I don't find anything forbidden except those 4 foods, which is dead animals, blood, the flesh of swine, and that which has been dedicated to other than Allah. So the Prophet has confirmed that no food is forbidden. The Prophet Muhammad, may the peace and the blessings of Allah be upon him, the final prophet, the last of the prophets, who was given the great, the mighty book, the Quran, that you people have abandoned. Allah, this is a prophecy that Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, you are going to die in misguidance. You people, you are going to live your life in misguidance. And on the day of judgment, Allah is saying, when the messenger will say, Ya Rabbi, inna qawmi takhadhu hadha al-Qur'ana mahjuran. Indeed, my Lord, my people, they abandoned this Quran. And it is true. This is a prophecy which was bound to happen. So today, we are not surprised that you people, you have abandoned the Quran and you are following a purported, a fabricated Sunnah. It has nothing to do with the Quran. Just like Christianity, what they invented about Trinity had nothing to do with the Prophet, that the Prophet Isa, Almighty Allah, sent him to bring guidance. He never claimed divinity. So all those who are following him to be a deity, those who are calling him to be God, all those lies and fabrications came from the enemies of the Prophet. So the enemies of the prophets, Bukhari, Muslim, Abu Dawud, Tirmidhi, those people, they invented lies and fabrications. And they were not people who wanted guidance for people. They came to mislead people from the way of Allah. My dear brothers and sisters, as I said, no one, you cannot follow Quran and Sunnah. This is a lie. And this ayah, Quran chapter 6, verse 145, is exposing you. Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah. Why? Wallahi, it is Allah. Allah has more right to be feared. How to perform as-salat, the amount to give for zakat, hajj. Allah said the Quran explains everything. Everything is in the Quran. The Quran teaches all the details of as-salat. It's in the Quran. However, because you have invented your own ways of worship and you don't find those ways of your worship in the Quran, doesn't mean the Quran does not explain as-salat. As-salat that was commanded by Allah is defined in the Quran. As-salat, the zakat, the hajj, those acts of worship which were commanded by Allah can be found in the Quran. However, the innovations, the fabrications, the lies and the concoctions that you people you created cannot be found in the Quran. Those can be found in your books, which you don't have any authority to follow. These are fabrications. And if you people are to say that even the hadith is sahih, it has not been authenticated. It is not been authenticated as sahih by the Prophet Muhammad. May the peace and the blessings of Allah be upon him. So Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, the lies and the fabrications, you have rejected all the verses of the Quran that Allah says the Quran explains everything by saying Allah said, obey Allah, obey the messenger. How? Your understanding contradicts the Quran. May Allah save us. May Allah have mercy upon us. Inshallah, my dear brothers and sisters, Allah should maintain us. Allah should maintain. The Quran explains how to perform as-salat. The Quran explains everything about guidance. Inshallah. You know, there's another ayah of the Quran that says, Almighty Allah, there's another ayah of the Quran. Almighty Allah said, if you differ in something, you should refer it to Allah and His messenger. To refer it to Allah is the Quran. To refer it to the messenger is also the Quran. My dear brothers and sisters, Allah should save us from the ways of shaitan. There's one ayah, they always, what they do is that they pick verses from the Quran and they give it a different meaning. There's one particular ayah that Almighty Allah said, وَمَا آتَاكُمُ الرَّسُولُ فَخُذُوهُ. Whatever the messenger gives you, take it. And whatever that he forbids you, stay away from. My dear brothers and sisters, just go and read the context of that verse. It was a war booty. Do you understand? It was a war booty that Allah is saying that after they have gone to war, it was about the sharing of war booty. And they just take the verse out of context to support the lies and the fabrications. And they will say that it means the Sunnah. That verse doesn't. This is a shame. It is a shame to you, Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, that you pick a verse out of context, a verse which is talking about the what? About the sharing of what? Of war boots, that it is referring to the Sunnah. Is it not disgraceful? This is a shame. Wallahi, may Allah have mercy upon us. With all the knowledge that you people are claiming you have, the taqwa is not there. You are not having the fear of Allah in you. That is why you are misleading people from the way of Allah. May Allah have mercy upon us. May Allah guide us. May Allah strengthen us. I know there are some among you. Almighty Allah said, you should remind, for indeed the reminder is beneficial to what? To the believers. Some among you are what? Are sincere. They don't know they have been misguided. May Allah bring them to guidance. May Allah bring them to the Qur'an. The Qur'an is a mighty book. You people, you say all sorts of insults to the Qur'an. The Qur'an is insufficient. The Qur'an needs the Sunnah more than the Sunnah needs the Qur'an. What do you mean? The Qur'an that Allah said is an explanation for everything. You are saying that the Qur'an, which is an explanation for everything, needs the Sunnah. The Sunnah doesn't need the Qur'an. No, we are telling you today that the Qur'an doesn't need the Sunnah. Why should even the Qur'an need the Sunnah? What does the Qur'an need the Sunnah for? The Qur'an doesn't need the Sunnah for anything. The Sunnah, the purported Sunnah, the lies and the fabrications, these are all from the enemies of what? Of the Prophet Muhammad. For the love that we have for the Prophet Muhammad, anyone who believes in the Prophet Muhammad, the last prophet of Allah, the truthful prophet of Allah, you should reject those narrations. They are never from the Prophet. They are never from Allah. And it is in the Quran that on the day of judgment, the Prophet is going to speak against them. Why is it that on the day of judgment, the Prophet is not going to say, my Lord, my people abandoned Quran and Sunnah? No. He said, my people, they abandoned the Quran. Why did he not talk about the Sunnah? Why? He said, my people, they abandoned the Quran. So it is a prophecy. You people, your way of worship is not in the Quran. Just like the Hindus, the Christians, the other religions, their ways of worship are not in the Quran. And Sunnah wal Jama'ah, your way of worship is also not in the Quran. Why? Because it was invented. It was fabricated. Your beliefs were fabricated. And the Quran, it explains everything. However, the Quran will never be a support for what? For falsehood. The Quran can never be a support for fabrications. And Alhamdulillah, Almighty Allah has made you people to testify yourself. You will testify your own bodies, your body testify that what? That the Quran does not explain your religion. You are having a different religion. You are not in Islam. You are kuffar. You people, you are disbelievers. Your religion is not in the Quran. Just like Hinduism is not in the Quran. Just like other religion are not in the Quran. The same. What difference do you have? Your religion is not in the Quran. Just like Hindus and the other sects, other religions, their beliefs and their practices. Can you get it in the Quran? You can't get it. Can you get Trinity in the Quran? You can't get Trinity in the Quran. You can't get reincarnation. You die, you come again. Can you get it in the Quran? You can't get it. So your religion is outside. And you yourself, you say to the people, your fabricated way of performing as-salat is not in the Quran. Allah has taught us how to perform as-salat. Everything is in the Quran. So your ways of worship were fabricated. That is why you don't find it in the Quran. Wallahi, anyone who is going to fear Allah and seek forgiveness and come back to Allah and His Messenger, which is the Quran, Allah is merciful. Allah will forgive such a person. The Quran is a book which explains everything. Almighty Allah said, we have sent down this Quran in Arabic so that you people, you understand. Afala ta'qilun. Won't you think? Won't you reflect? Afala yatadabbarun al-Quran. Won't you ponder over the Quran? Had the Quran not been from Allah, you would have found several contradictions. Allah said, obey Allah, obey the messenger. It is one thing. Obey Allah is the Quran. Obey the messenger is also the Qur'an. In another ayah, Almighty Allah said, whoever obeys the messenger has obeyed Allah. One thing, you only need to obey the messenger. If you obey the messenger, you have obeyed Allah. One thing, just obeying the messenger, the Quran, you have obeyed Allah. And whoever also obeys Allah has obeyed the messenger. So two things, obey Allah, obey the messenger. Whoever obeys the messenger, وَمَنْ يُطِعِ الرَّسُولَ فَقَدْ أَطَاعَ اللَّهَ. Whoever obeys the messenger has obeyed Allah. It means it is one thing. If you obey the messenger, you have obeyed Allah. If you obey Allah, you have obeyed the messenger. How do we obey Allah? To obey Allah is to obey all the instructions of Allah, all the commandments of Allah. So the one who has obeyed Allah has obeyed the messenger. And the one who has obeyed the messenger has obeyed Allah. So A is equal to B, and B is equal to A, which is the Quran. My dear brothers and sisters, the Quran, it explains everything except falsehood and fabrications. The Quran explains everything except the fabricated Sunnah, except the fabricated Trinity. So the Quran can never be a support for an innovation. My dear brothers and sisters, Allah should save us from the ways of Shaitan. Allah should help us. Wallahi, Almighty Allah is saying that you should fear a day that will be brought back to Allah. This is a temporal life. Whatever is going to happen to us in this world, that is temporal. Whether someone, no matter the suffering, the hardship, whatever torment that you go through, okay, there were those who were what? Who because of their belief, they were tormented by disbelievers. People like Ahl-Sunnah wal Jama'ah. When they want to follow the book of Allah, you become their enemy. Why should someone even become your enemy? For following the book of Allah. If you people, you were sincere, you were truthful, you would have been happy that Allah has sent this mighty book. Allah will guide anyone. Allah will have mercy upon anyone who follows the book. So we don't have anything. Wallahi, all that we have to follow is the Quran. You are having your lies and your fabrications. Go ahead. No one can stop you. But we are also making it plain for the people that your religion and your acts of worship are not in the Quran. May Allah save us. On the day of judgment, Allah will be the judge between we and you. May Allah save us. May Allah give us guidance. You can go ahead and do whatever that you want to do. May Almighty Allah save us from such a misguidance. May Allah have mercy upon us. May Allah help us to go by the Quran. Inshallah. My dear brothers and sisters, inshallah, Allah should forgive us. Allah should have mercy upon us. Assalamu alaikum. Please, I want you should subscribe. Don't forget to subscribe. And also share the video with your friends and your families. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.